Mac. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is education. On the conversation on education, I'm going to be talking about how you set yourself up for success, to think critically and to think expansively. And now we hear these words all the time around being more expansive, giving yourself the opportunity to grow, recognizing that there are different ways that we can tap into our potential, or thinking critically, giving yourself the tools, the skills required to make the kinds of decisions that are going to benefit you, benefit the people around you, with the right foundation in place. And so to think critically requires a certain level of expansiveness. It requires you to be comfortable with ambiguity, to be comfortable with gray, to have the opportunity to really reflect on the beliefs that you've had and whether or not you want to maintain those beliefs. There's a whole gamut of different things that are required to qualify as being someone who's a critical and expansive thinker. And so I want to talk about some of the traits, some of the qualities that I feel go hand in hand with critical and expansive thinking, and how in adopting these points of view or these lenses or these ways of looking, you give yourself the opportunity to think much more critically about the situations that you're in or the decisions that you need to make, setting yourself and the people up around you, and the people who are dependent on your decisions. You're setting yourselves up for success. And here I'm going to give you three qualities or three postures, I would say, that you would need to maintain in order to continuously think critically and expansively. And one of them is a certain level of distance. I think there needs to be a certain level of psychological distance that you need to create to be able to think without having your perspective skewed by your emotions. And so when I say psychological distance translates in different ways. And so for me, when it is the case that I need to make a decision, I recognize the specific emotions that hinder and not help my decision. So I don't think that emotions in and of themselves are harmful to decision making. I think certain emotions are, though. There are specific emotions that are set up to help us have a much more narrowed view, a much more focused view, so that we can be much more action oriented without necessarily thinking about the consequences. And so some of these emotions can be fear, it can be anger, it can be rage. Like, a lot of these are emotions that set us up for action, not necessarily in a way that is driven or fueled by cerebral thought. And so I am someone who, when it is the case that I'm making a critical decision, I know that the decision has a big impact, if not just in me, but on the things that I'm responsible for. My first step is always to create psychological distance. I never want to make a knee-jerk decision. And so knee-jerk decisions, I know what kinds of situations bring those up, where I feel like, okay, like I feel the pressure to make a choice. And I know that even that in and of itself, like, pressure is something that we choose how we respond to it, and how I respond to pressure is distance, psychological distance. It means I'm actively and consciously and intentionally putting my emotions on a leash and really trying to open my mind to all of the possibilities. And a lot of the times when it is the case that we're under pressure to choose between one of two choices. And so whenever I feel like I need to create psychological distance, give myself an opportunity to make the best ways, part of how I run through that exercise is I give myself two or three other choices. So I do not believe that the choices in front of us are any point in time ever the only choices available to us. I think there's always going to be a hidden choice. And it's the choice that's not obvious. It's the choice that people maybe aren't necessarily thinking about. It's not the intuitive choice by any means, but it's the choice that you'll arrive to if you give yourself the time and the distance to think more deeply about the issue. And so I like to give myself the option to figure out, well, let's have a third or fourth alternative. Like, what's the alternative choice to what's in front of me? And I know I'm not going to get there if I'm emotional, if I'm in the emotions that give me a hard time to think expansively, but I know that I will get there eventually, if not sooner rather than later, if I do give myself the opportunity to focus on figuring out what that third or fourth choice is. And so psychological distance is about giving yourself mental distance as well as emotional distance. It's also about recognizing, like, your own self-interest. And self-interestedness is not necessarily a bad thing, but we do have our own agenda, right? Like, there are things that we have already defined as positive outcomes for us. And I recognize that when it is the case that I'm trying to create psychological distance because I want to give myself the opportunity to make the best decision for the situation situation, like myself in mind, but the situation at hand, then I also need to create mental distance and become aware of what my prejudices are, or what my own biases are, or what my own motivations are, like just cognizant about them and making sure that those things aren't blocking me from seeing an opportunity in front of me that I hadn't previously considered. And a lot of us think that the only opportunities that exist are the opportunities previously considered, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Another way to set yourself up for success as it relates to making critical decisions and thinking expansively is being honest with yourself about how much you actually know. So we never know enough, right? I'm of the mindset that no matter how much I learn, no matter how much I see, it's never going to be enough. I have an infinite amount of opportunity in my life to experience life in such a way where I'm constantly growing, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly challenging the views that I've learned and that I've adopted from the past. There's this never-ending cycle. And so because I'm aware of that, I'm constantly adjusting my lens. So my lens is informed by my personal experience, it's informed by my education, it's informed by the fact that I've had the opportunity and the privilege to travel, to meet people from different cultural backgrounds, to liaise, connect with those people, and to recognize that there is more than one way to live. There's more than one way to believe, to position ourselves, to be happy, to be morally sound. I mean, there's so many different ways that these things translate. And if I only think that my way is the right way, then I'm not setting myself up to think critically or expansively. So I think one of the key things that we all need to be cognizant of is that all of us are on a different path. Our paths are all unique and our paths are all worth honoring. And I think this is so important because a lot of the times we feel comfortable, like even giddy at the thought of judging and being critical about someone who's picked an alternate path, because it's just not a path we would ever consider. It's not a path that we feel would align to us. And because we feel that way, we allow our ego to project in that person and to criticize them for their life choices and for the path that they've taken. And I think that it's really important to recognize that there is something to be learned about every path that each of us are walking in life. And if you're too caught on how it's so different from yours and how it's so far from what you would want or what you would do, that you decided to denounce it without really fully understanding the levers, the drives behind those decisions, and behind like what that person has learned, what they have gone through, how they've expanded because of taking this alternate path, because they've taken an unbeaten path, then you're not setting yourself up to think creatively, you're not setting yourself to think expansively. You're actually operating from a very limited point of view, because recognize you have 8 billion people in the world, and a very small percentage of that 8 billion are the people that you know and have the opportunity to liaise with. And there's so much more people out there than we'll ever have the opportunity to meet in our lifetime that have lived fulfilling, successful lives, completely different lifestyles than your own. And if someone can have a successful, fulfilling life, living a lifestyle completely different from your own, then how right can your lifestyle actually be? It's just right for you. And that brings me to my third point, which is truths are corroborated. The truths that we leverage in our day-to-day lives are best case scenario truths. The truths that are truths for now that could be subject to change later. So when we think about even the ways that things are cycling in life, it just shows that the things that we anchored on as our truths, as our true North Star, as our truth by way of our culture, our truths by way of our political views, our truths by way of even like how we operate in a business, like these are always subject to disruption. There's always something pushing against these truths. And that's just life. That's how life is supposed to go. But it's going to be especially difficult for you. It's going to be especially difficult for you if you think that the truths that you grew up with are hard, cold facts. Very little about our life are hard, cold facts, but I find it a little bit unsettling when I meet someone who treats a truth that is a corroborated truth, which is like a religious belief, a spiritual belief, a political belief, like any of these beliefs that are maintained or governed in any given society, like when they anchor to those things as these black and white truths, like that's concerning because it means that they limited themselves to that corroborated truth. And you never want to limit your own personal growth to a truth that is subject to change, but how can you avoid that if you don't realize that a lot of the truths that you grew up with, that you were taught even from a young period of time, like if you anchor into those truths, they become the dogmas that drown you. And I say that, I mean, to be a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's very serious, I guess, because when you anchor on the things that you believe, because they're things that you were taught to believe, not because you challenge those beliefs, not because you've given yourself an opportunity opportunity to think differently, then you can really hinder your capacity to grow and to think expansively and to think critically. And I think that it's just so important that we think about how we think and about the mechanisms that drives the way that we are thinking, so that we can challenge those mechanisms to make sure we're never putting ourselves or the people around us in a box. And we don't want to put ourselves and the people around us in a box, because we limit people when we put them in boxes, and we limit our own potential when we put ourselves in a box based on the frames that we leverage to think, the lenses that we use. I mean, these lenses and these frames are supposed to change as we grow and evolve and as we learn and expand in this life. So that's the topic of conversation that I had for you today. Some food for thought for you. If I have piqued your interest, then I do invite you to join in on our live events. We do host live events at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our website. So definitely be sure to check those out. Now, if you do see yourself joining our community on an ongoing basis, then we do offer package plans. Yes, we do offer package plans over and above our live events, as well as access to webinars and workshops largely focused on self-mastery over and above these events. So check it out. Be part of our game changer community, being part of the change that you want to see, allowing us a small role to play in your journey. We are also on the road to 1K. We do provide also parent-child workshops that enable you to focus on leadership development skills, critical thinking, and intellectual development in children. So check that out. We offer 4 core modules that we feel set the foundation for success, and that is focusing on autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept. So we have something for everyone in your family. We are positive of it. And again, if you have a comment, if you have your own view on how to focus on expanding your realm of reality and how to think critically, then leave that comment down below, and I look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.